Radio TV phono nut here, and what we have is an RCA kitty phonograph from late 68, early 69, based on date codes I saw on the inside. Yes, I've already peeked. And this is really nothing special, but it was made during the transition period from the old RCA logo to the new one. As you can see on the lid, it says RCA Victor, solid state, just like the older ones. However, when we open it up, it has the new RCA block logo that they started using sometime in 68, and that logo is still in use today on RCA products, although the original RCA went under in 86, I believe. Yeah, I think it was 86 when GE bought them. And then a couple of years later, GE sold the RCA and GE consumer product line to Thompson, and then since then the name's been sold several more times, and now it's basically just a trademark that's slapped on cheap Chinese garbage. Yeah, I'm looking at this. I see the wire from the wires from the cartridge are broken, and this uses one of those cheapy little kitty tone arms, and even though this has 78 RPM, it only has a one-sided cartridge. I guess by then they figured that the only 78s that would be played would be the later kitty microgroove records. Here's the cartridge. As you can see, the needle is broken off, but that won't be no problem to replace. What I'm more concerned about is, does this cartridge even have any output? And we can see what happened. The leads just broke off of the connectors here. Most likely what happened, the cartridge cable was hanging under the tone arm, and it either got caught on something or somebody grabbed it and just pulled it and broke it off. So, alright, let me go get my meter and see if we can determine if this cartridge has any zip left to it. Okay, I have my multimeter set to the 2-volt AC scale connected to the cartridge, and I should be able to stroke this saddle where the needle rests with my finger, and if this cartridge is good, I should see some indication on the meter. Frankly, I'll be surprised if it has any output. Let's see. Hold on. Yeah, it's got a little something. Not really what I would expect, but it's got a little something. We might could put a stylus in here and use it. Let me flip it up to the 20-volt scale and stroke it really hard and see if it'll jump up to, yeah. But this is still not a conclusive test, because I've seen these that would show something on the meter, but when you would install them in a tone arm and try to play a record, you couldn't get nothing. Alright, I've already checked the amplifier and I get a little hum out of it, so let's turn it on and see if we get anything across from the cartridge. Not enough to even say we got anything. Unless there's something wrong with this amplifier, because I wasn't getting a very loud buzz from it anyway, but I really wasn't expecting to, since this is a cheapo kitty thing. Yeah, that's what I get when I touch the amp inputs. It's not very loud, but it's still louder than what I'm getting out of this cartridge, so yeah, I think this one's pretty much toast. Well, here's the amplifier. It uses all of 3 transistors and 3 electrolytic capacitors. The 2 blue ones look to be Japanese, and they're probably still usable. The little black one, those tend to dry out, so I'll ESR test it, and if it's bad, I'll change it. If it's not, we'll leave it alone. Well, the capacitors seem fine, and I'm going to leave them alone. Alright, here's a new static 470 cartridge. Physically, it's not compatible with this tone arm, but whenever I stroke the cartridge, stroke the needle, it's jumping way up there. You can see that one time it went up to over 10 volts. So, yeah, that other cartridge is shot. Okay, by use of both hands, I was able to make a temporary connection with the other cartridges, and I got a pretty good tick out of the speaker. But on this one, as you can see, I'm barely getting anything. So yeah, we need to try to round up a cartridge. Thing is, I don't even know if this record player is even worth installing a cartridge in. I'm going to have to try to clean it up a little bit and see what the outcome is. Back in the day, I would have just, had I been around back in the day, I'd have just ran down to the parts house and got one of those $3 universal replacement tone arms and slapped it on here. But those days are gone, and when you find these cartridges, they're $20 and $25 a piece, and like I said, I don't even know if the record player is worth that. And if I bought one of these cartridges, I'd want to buy it from a reputable cartridge dealer, because the ones you get from your average A to Z eBay flipper that they found in a box of junk at an estate sale, there's a good chance they're not going to be any good, and then you really have no recourse. At least when I buy from somebody like the Voice of Music or Ed Crockett or Needle Daddy on eBay, they specialize in cartridges, and if you get one that's no good, they'll make it right. You buy one from your average eBay flipper, and it's, well, I'm sorry, but that was sold as is. And yeah, I've been burnt that way before, and that's the reason I try not to spend over $5 or $10 for a cartridge when I'm buying from an average Joe Blow flipper. But after a while, those $5 and $10 add up, and it kind of hurts. Looking on eBay, I found original equipment cartridges in the range from $16 all the way on up to over $60. And we're certainly not doing the over $60 part, and I'm really reluctant to even do the $16 part, because what if I get it and it's no good? So I've decided I'm going to slap one of these new modern Crosley cartridges in the tone arm. No, it won't have the volume that it did with the 3-volt cartridge or the 2-volt cartridge, whatever it is, but at least it'll play a record. And quite frankly, I'm not worried about it, because I'm wanting to fix this thing as cheaply as possible, because I know when the time comes for me to get rid of it, I'm not going to get much for it. Now here's what we got to worry about. The cartridge is just wide enough to fit in the tone arm, but it doesn't have the proper angle. So I found this little doohickey. I think this is something for a tetrad cartridge mounting. And we can epoxy that to the tone arm just like this here. And then epoxy the cartridge to that mount, and then that'll be about the right tracking angle. Listen to me talking about tracking angles on a cheap kitty record player. I don't think anybody's going to be playing their Mobile Fidelity Sound Lab audiophile grade vinyl on this, so they'll probably be playing nothing but cheap old scratched up thrift store records, and so what if they get a little more scratched or worn. Alright, I have the new Chinese cartridge installed. Yes, it looks a little sloppy. No, I'm really not too concerned about it. These pins on the cartridge, I had to JB weld them to the cartridge to keep them from moving. It seems like that's a problem on a lot of these newer cartridges. The pins are not stable, and these cartridge connectors are not the best either, but what can I say? You know, we work with what they give us these days. So these two pins, and I know you're not supposed to do this, but I had to solder those connectors directly to the cartridge to get them to stay on there. But apparently I didn't hurt anything, because whenever I scrape the needle, I get some meter activity, so that's what we want. And like I already said, this is not going to be very loud. It's not going to be kind to records, but after all, this is a cheap kitty record player. This is not some critical listening station. It gets okay for personal use, but this is one of those loud Motown 45s. Let's see what it does on something else.
Long to know that you understand, my buddy.
Yeah, that's an older one that's not cut as loud, and the volume level's not as good. And I'll also tell you, I'm not really impressed with the amplifiers in these. If you hit them with a hot signal from a hot cartridge, they sound okay. But if the signal's too low, not only do you have weak volume, they tend to distort. And come to think of it, I had one of these that had an ample hot cartridge in it that sounded kind of distorted. And they use this amplifier from probably about 65 up until 69 or so, and personally I think even the One Tube Wonder amplifier has a cleaner sound than this does.
On and here comes Brad in the backstretch, Harley going to the inside.
That's wide open. Let's try a styrene 45 and see if it cuts into it. Well, it seems to be doing okay, but you notice this tone arm, the front of it is a little bit higher than the back. But like I said, there's not a lot I can do here. You can't buy new production crystal cartridges like what went in this. I'm not paying $15 or $20+ for something that may or may not work. I've done that enough. Done it too much, actually. So we just have to more or less deal with whatever I can come up with. At least it plays now. Now, if I can come up with one of those universal replacement tone arms for not much money that has the 3-volt flip-over LP78 cartridge, which I would prefer anyway, since this has 78 on it, then that's what we'll do. But even those are getting hard to find. The last few of those I saw on eBay was $50, $60, $70, $80. Now that don't mean anybody's actually paying that, but eBay is, I'm starting to call it Fantasy Bay, because everybody has these fantasy asking prices of what they think this crap's worth. I actually have an arm coming that set me back about $13 that I hope the cartridge is good in. If it is, I might put it on this one, or I might put it on something, a One Tube Wonder that sounds better. Now, I did a little cleanup on this and got it looking pretty good. Actually looks really nice. The only thing I couldn't quite get off, there was a big brown, dirty, looked like a needle scratch here. But I kept on and got it as faded out as I could, but I don't know what we'll do with this. Maybe I'll get an arm somewhere that'll fit on this, but right now you can just say we resurrected a 1969 El Cheapo RCA record player. Okay, back on this RCA kitty player that's actually been sitting idle for a couple of months since the last time I looked at it. Let's see, what did happen last time? Let's see, the original tone arm was a dud, so was the cartridge. So I took that off and I sheared down the stud where the original, sheared off the stud where the original tone arm was mounted, and was going to mount a universal tone arm, which the earlier versions of these had a more conventional type tone arm. Well, the first one I tried was this type that I ordered off of eBay, and last time I checked it, the cartridge was plenty hot enough, but the arm didn't come with a hardware pack. You know, the nuts and washers and all that you need. And when you know all the nuts that I have are either a hair too big or a hair too small, isn't that the way it always works? and I was going to run to the hardware store and try to find something. And then all this COVID-19 mess hit, so I sort of forgot about that. Well, a friend sent me a couple of tone arms that he found, and one of them is this black plastic static tone arm that's a universal replacement and was also used as OEM by many kiddie record player manufacturers from the mid-60s into the 70s, and it uses an static 146 cartridge. That's the 2.5 volt crystal cartridge that 99% of the time is always bad. This one still has output, but the suspension is very stiff. It wasn't too vertically compliant to begin with, I don't imagine, because these were mainly meant for mono records. And it will play a record, but on stereo records and high-intensity records with any amount of bass, it's probably going to skip. And yeah, I did something boneheaded. This is a two-sided needle. Both sides are LP, and I accidentally dropped the tone arm and broke the point off of the LP side, off of the other side, so we're using the other LP side for now. I'll probably order a LP 78 flip needle for this. This doesn't sound too bad, but on this particular record player, in fact on all of the RCA solid state kiddie record players from the mid-60s up until about 70 or so that use this same amplifier chassis, the hotter the cartridge, the better. You better stick a 2.5 or 3 volt cartridge in there, because if you don't, it's going to sound weak and distorted. These amplifiers need a hot signal to work right. Now, in order to play 10 or 12-inch records, you have to twist this armrest counterclockwise, and then it drops down into place. And then, of course, that's our 45 adapter. Let's go get an album and see what happens. It seems to be playing that one okay. Now I'm going to do a little PM on the drive mechanism, and then we're probably going to call it a day here. And this is the little metal protector clip. I clipped it back on so I don't bust off the second needle tip. And this is just the standard General Industries drive mechanism. I'm not going to show you the cleaning and lubrication procedure in its entirety, because you've seen me do it before, and because the battery is running low on this camera. So we'll just clean what needs cleaning and lube what needs lubing and put it back together and have a little yellow RCA kiddie phonograph. Idler wheel's in pretty good shape. At least it has no divots in it. We'll just give it the sandpaper treatment to get rid of that first little layer of glaze, but it ought to be okay. And this one, I believe, is a 1407-03. The one with the bigger center hole is the 1490-01. I don't know why they changed, but it seems like in the late 60s they went to the one with the smaller hole. And you can see here we've got some lubricant that has turned to powder, so we'll need to take all that out and clean it up and put a fresh coat of non-vaginal phonograph lubricant on there. I decided to go ahead and change these mounting grommets. They're still pliable, but as you can see, they're starting to change color in some spots, and those are the kind that are prone to turning to powder and crumbling to dust, so I might as well just go ahead and change them. I will hang on to these for emergencies in case I get some piece of junk, maybe a beat-up Resurrection record player that we need some grommets for, and we can use these. Alright, there we are back together. course, it goes without saying, I wouldn't recommend playing my prized records on this, because like I said, this cartridge suspension is very stiff, and this arm tracks a bit on the hefty side, so this is just one you would want to have for nostalgia reasons and play your records, such as this styrene Four Seasons 45 that's already gouged to heck and back anyway, so no big loss if you gouge it some more. But I wouldn't play my good condition 45s or LPs on this.
Somebody wonderful to see. Now I never knew I could feel all aglow inside and just like a kid.
Even though we don't have the proper 78 needle for this, just wanted to show it with a 78, but with the proper 78 needle, that would probably be the most ideal type of record to play on something like this. Again, we can't let this video in without E40 featuring Bun B and Pimp C of UGK and whatever this Julius Santana talking about singing about mumbling about a white girl. Personally, I don't know any white GURLs myself.
Just like they were up your chest like E.C. White girl, white girl, white girl, white girl, gotcha. White girl, daddy, super with it though. She the chick who had Tony Montana slip. Chick who had Tony Montana slip. I give a run. The Sir Mix-a-Lot.